reported separately for the governing body.
Good evening. Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, PC met last week. We had 3 applicants, 2 of which showed up. First one was Teresco. They are the owners of Odra, which is a granite and marble shop out on Old 309 there. They submitted plans to build an 1,190 square foot addition to the rear of their existing building. They want to use it to cover an existing concrete slab. Wouldn't change impervious surface, it's covering the slab that's already there. They want to use this building to store their granite and marble, which is presently stored on that slab outside. They have a handful of existing nonconformities on the site that would most likely not require being brought into conformity. It's looking like use E1, all right, Steve? The E1 is what we figured, is going to be the best fit for that business use. That, along with the parking requirements, we're going to let the zoning officer hash out with these guys. The plan that they submitted was based on an unsubmitted plan from 2007 that was drawn up, was never submitted. The plan back then was drawn up with our predated zoning ordinances. Since they had drawn that up, our ordinances had changed a bit. So that, and there was a lot of engineering discussion about updating to the new ordinances. So we treated this as a sketch plan. They're gonna clean things up and come back in, and we'll deal with them again when they get it cleaned up. So that was Teresco. The second applicant was Durstein Millhaven. I'm sure you know about this one. Andy DeGrucci owns this. He's a stonemason, and he owns Lime Works. They sell this specialized lime. So they own this 14-acre tract that has the historic Durstein Mill on it down at State and Keystone Drive. I know you guys know where it is. And that's where he runs his business now. His Limeworks business, he's running it out of a temporary office. This site has an existing house, a cottage, a mill, a garage, a barn, and a pole barn. He wants to use the existing barns for office, storage, workshops, manufacturing, as well as for livestock. He wants to use the farmhouse as a guest house, the cottage as a caretaker's house. The mill he wants to convert to a workshop and a loft for residents. And he wants to provide space on the property for training and construction of tiny houses. So this guy's pretty ambitious. He did get relief from zoning hearing for the multiple uses on the site. That I think it was back in 2016 that he presented. And I don't think he had the tiny house aspect of that when he went in for zoning hearing, but we'll see how that washes out. So without getting into too much more detail about the project, there were a lot of engineering comments on this that we dealt with. They're willing to comply with just about everything. So they're going to clean this plan up and come back at a future date for preliminary final.
We're already with the bridge.
Oh, that's right. They got permit. Was it from PennDOT to construct that bridge, or they had to?
From PADEP.
For the wetlands.
They received a joint permit from the Department of Environmental Protection and the Army Corps of Engineers for the crossing of the wetlands.
Yeah, so
the
they.
creek.
They're
And then subsequently, they came in for a zoning hearing determination because there was a our floodplain ordinance issue. But because they had the permits in hand, that variance was granted.
So that access is from Keystone Drive.
What are they going to do with the other entrance?
They're going to leave that entrance open. They're going to, you put up signage to direct people to the other entrance. They want to leave it open for.
Yeah, that's dangerous. They have trucks going in and out of there.
Yes.
And that's a dangerous spot.
Yeah, and they know that.
Yeah.
So that's why they had to get access off of Keystone Drive. They are going to leave that access open for emergency service and probably for their own personal use. So that was it for Durstein Millhaven. Do you have any questions on that? It's a really big project.
Some of that we heard back in
Yes,
2016. but
yeah.
Some of it was additions, yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of additional info
Yeah.
from the previous presentation.
Involving.
Thank you.
There's a lot going on. If he lives to be 120, you might see the end of it. But, it's very ambitious. I hope he can pull it off. The third applicant that didn't show up was Eastern Montgomery Properties. They had submitted plan for a 9,000 square foot contractor service building on 2 lots on, where are we at? The corner of Mill and Forest. Not the corner lot, but the next one in. They own 2 lots side by side, and they want to put this 9,000 square foot contractor service building on. It's in the PC2. It's allowable. It's a little. They have this building going across both lots, so we don't exactly know what they're planning.
Did they come in before about a parking lot?
No, that was the one on the corner.
On the corner.
This is the next lot in
Oh,
from the corner.
okay.
Yeah. So we don't know what they want to use it for other than its contractor services. But the dual lot with the building spanning both lots throws up a red flag. We got to deal with that. So that was it for them. Last thing we had was the comp plan. We reviewed it. We voted unanimously to recommend adoption to you guys. So that's in your court now. We loved it.
Okay,
So that's my report.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Can I have a
I'll make a motion to adopt Chris's plan as presented.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
Thank you, Chris.
Good night.
Okay, Park and Rec, Bob Strobel.
Yes, I'll just make it quick. Park and Rec had a usual party gathering we do every year in December to celebrate the holidays. So we do have an opening now in the Park and Rec. We had someone leave, so everybody raise your hand who wants to be a Park and Rec member. So that's the... We have some openings. Okay, but that's it. We had no meeting.
Okay, there's really nothing to adopt?
Nothing to adopt.
Approve, yeah, okay.
Other than to make a motion.
Oh, yes. We want to make a motion to advertise,
I'll make a motion.
okay, to advertise for new, okay, second, all in favor? Aye, okay. Thank you. Holiday House Pool, Joint Rec Authority. Some good news to this month. We now have a new manager. Suzanne will now be focusing all of her activities on the board. Karen Nace. Karen is a person who grew up at the Holiday House Pool. She was a swimming instructor there. She was a lifeguard there. She was a pool manager several times. She lives in her family lives in Percy, and Sellersville. Family lives in Sellersville. She lives in Percy right now. But she's a teacher at Penn Ridge High School, so I think she's going to be a really good fit, and she will assume the management position on January 1st. I have tons and tons of information on her. Very long resume at Penn Ridge High School, but I'm not going to go through all that. The other thing is we did approve our 2019 budget, and for everyone's information, we did increase memberships across the board by $10. Family memberships, seniors, juniors, and regular memberships are all now $10 more. We did not increase additional family members to a family membership. Okay, so if you have additional, it's still the old rate. So, was there anything else, Suzanne, that, oh, you weren't there, I forgot. Okay, so I think one of the reasons we felt justified to raise the membership fee was because of all the work we've been doing there for the last 2 years. You've heard me spiel off about that enough over the past 2 years every month. But we have a lot more things we're doing. We're putting together an exciting schedule for this summer already. Memberships will be available in January from the Borough Hall in Sellersville. So that's all I have.
Jim, can I ask you for, in January maybe, could you give the board a breakdown of what memberships were purchased in 2018? As
Yeah, I
far
can
as
get
per
that.
township,
Sure.
outside townships?
Yeah,
Just to get an idea.
Sure, yeah, I can get that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, fine. That's it.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the Joint Rec Authority report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. That brings us to the police commission report. Chief Lake.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Well, I won't stand so tall there, so. This is the December 2018 police report. It lists the crimes and activity for the Penrose Regional Police Department for November of 2018. We're always running a month behind. You can see that the department handled 582 calls for service. 289 of those were in East Rock Hill Township and 293 were in West Rock Hill. And the department handled 54 traffic crashes, 20 of those in East Rock Hill and 34 in West Rock Hill. 21 were reportable crashes and 33 were non-reportable crashes. The difference between that is a reportable crash is a crash where a vehicle needs to be towed and or someone's injured. When you see non-reportable, there's still a report written, but it doesn't meet that criteria where those crash reports are sent to the state. The department handled 8 Part 1 crimes and 18 Part 2 crimes in November. Part 1 crimes are your most serious crimes. For West Rock Hill, the crimes are as follows: burglary, force, non-residence, 4 theft cases, 1 sex offense against a minor, 2 fraud cases, 3 disorderly conduct cases, 1 criminal mischief, 1 trespass, 2 DUI cases, and 1 dog law violation. In East Rock Hill, there was a burglary, force, non-residence, 1 theft, 3 fraud cases, 1 criminal mischief case, 1 DUI, 1 terroristic threat, 1 dog law violation, and 1 ordinance violation. The burglary in West Rock Hill, we set up a sting operation in that resident, got their property back. Call me at the station tomorrow, I'd go into that. It's just like a cops episode, so it's quite neat. The criminal charges filed in 2018, in November of 2018 are as follows: 1 charge for recklessly endangering another person, 1 flight to avoid apprehension, 2 DUI charges, 3 charges of possession of marijuana, 1 charge of possession of methamphetamines, 1 charge of receiving stolen property, 1 charge of theft of services, and 1 charge of bad checks. And there's the police activity conducting 190 traffic enforcement details, 20 details on Old Bethlehem Pike, issuing 6 verbal traffic warnings, 29 citations, and 41 written warnings. And officers also conducted 210 business checks. So that's the police report. We can talk about the budget, since you had mentioned our budget, if you want me to.
Give them.
If you have that, did I send you?
Just give an overview.
Yes.
How many years would, you know?
Well, we ain't they, well, they, not me, the commission did, Penrose Regional Police Commission with the,
Many hours of negotiation.
Penrose Regional Police Benevolent Association, that's the union that covers our officers. I'm an administrator, so I'm not a part of that union. The secretary's not a part of that union. So Greg and Mary Ann, the manager of East Rock Hill, they're part of our Public Safety Committee, so they met with the union representatives, and they inked a 5-year deal, which will take them to 2023, which is pretty good. You know, those 3-year contracts, they just keep, you know, coming around, and the longer the term, the better it is. And even though there might be economic uncertainty, the last year of the contract, there was a 3% raise. So it ends on the downside. Healthcare premium reimbursements, they'll be contributing up to 5%. However, officers hired after January will automatically pay 5%. So the officers that are there now will tier up to that, and officers afterwards will automatically pay 5%. And there was a salary freeze for new hires after 2019, but that's all negotiated. Greg and Mary Ann would field questions and, you know, ask questions. I'd, you know, maybe give them answers, and, you know, then the board, you know, ultimately, you know, hashes that out and votes on that. And if you have any questions, I'd certainly answer them. But, you know, it's a police you know, they kind of would look at police contracts, like Greg and Mary Ann would sit there, the officers come in with a wish list, we want a helicopter, we want an airplane, whatever, and they said, no, you're getting a wagon, and, and then you kind of work towards a middle ground. What you don't want to do is you don't want to go to what's known as an arbitration hearing, because you'll lose. The township will lose on that. Usually they lose because the amount of money spent on attorney's fees and for the neutral arbitrator. Usually the township is required to pay that. So negotiation is paramount in those things. Fred, Mr. Dykstra?
The chief's editorial opinions on the win-loss possibilities are not necessarily shared by the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, they're not, yeah. I've negotiated these contracts since I came here in 1988. So you see, we only went to arbitration one time, and it's not good. It's not good for the township. It's not good, really not good for the police. But Fred Dykstra, he was one of the supervisors that we had negotiated with at one time, and healthcare is always an issue that we talk about. Basically, your police department expenses are the building, employees, and a new vehicle. That's basically it. I mean, those other costs kind of stay the same. So officers will say, hey, we want 6 hours for court time, and they say no, 2's enough, and so they kind of meet in the middle. But if anybody ever has any questions about it, please call me. I'd love to explain how those negotiations work. Fred is probably a tough negotiator. The toughest negotiator is Dr. Erstein. He was tough to negotiate with, but that's how it's usually handled. When they compare these contracts, this is another thing to remember. That they don't compare them to. Is my 5 minutes up?
Yeah, you're fine.
Oh well. They're going to compare it with full-time police agencies in the Penridge School District. They're not going to compare us to, let's say, a police department in the middle of the state. So those are the types of comparisons, probably similar to the school district. When they negotiate a contract, teachers in Penridge versus teachers in the middle part of the state. So that's where those negotiations come in play. They look at, okay, what are full-time police departments earn? What are those officers earning in these other departments? And quite frankly, the supervisors, the commission, which is comprised of the supervisors, they do a really good job of keeping those costs down. They compared to other municipalities, they really run a tight budget, but we still have a full-time police department. We provide those services, and we have to run 24/7. When a guy calls out sick, we just can't say, that's it. We're not covering it. We have to have policies in place that cover that. So they do a good job of that. That's my 5 minutes is definitely up.
Are you out of breath?
No, I'm not.
Need my water?
No. But please, if you have any questions, it's not a secret, it's public. I'll send you a copy of it.
When's your office going to be open? It says 8 to 4, but I went there and nobody's there.
Well, if you go to the office and it's not open,
I tried that 3 times.
pick up the phone there and they'll call an officer back. Sometimes that'll happen, just like Greg and Mary Ann and other townships, they cut staff. We have one clerical staff. And, when she's on vacation, the officers don't sit at the station. They're out handling calls. So if you come to the station, whether it's after hours, during hours, when the door's locked or whatever, there's a phone there. Pick up the phone, it'll bring you right to the dispatch center in Doylestown, and they'll have an officer come back. So.
And I've used the phone in the past, and sometimes there's an officer downstairs that just comes up. So it does work.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I think you guys are doing a great job and we get our money.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Chief. Can I get a approval of?
Yeah, you forgot to mention that West Rock Hill Township has the lowest tax rate millage-wise with a full-time police department.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the chief's report?
I'll make it.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
I expect someone to call me more, I can tell you about that soon.
Hey, it's a great story, and it is like something out of Cops. I've heard it, so. Tax collector's report.
Okay.
Suzanne Clark.
For the month of December, annual taxes, I collected $2,598.44. For 2018 interim tax bills, $6.38, and one streetlight tax of $35.61.
And-
Taxes are all due by the end of the year,
Yeah.
31st of December. Must be in my office. Liens will be filed January 1st.
You made another comment to me yesterday about taxes.
Oh, yeah, we've collected more than it was originally budgeted, so that's a good thing.
How's that?
Thank you, Suzanne.
Good, thank you. Motion to approve the tax.
I'll make that motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, engineers report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item we had on the agenda was the Kratz major subdivision. Is there someone here tonight? Come on up, Kurt. Let's Kurt come on up.
Do you have a letter from Steve Ballmer in your packet?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
You want music?
Give them
Good evening, my name is Kirk Klaus, Schlosser and Klaus Consulting Engineers. This project is the Kratz Farm on Ridge Valley Road. We're proposing a 6-lot subdivision. We're proposing to maintain the existing estate lot, the structures on the house. As you can see by the plan, there are 5 other single-family residential lots. We have a review letter dated November 7 from Wynn Associates. What's your pleasure, gentlemen? You want me to just go through each, or just items that we need to discuss?
I think if you will comply, I don't know if we need to.
Item number 1 in the letter, if you don't mind, I'll come back to, because it has to do with a small waiver request.
I think what Mr. Duval was saying is, tell us that everything in this letter is a will comply except, so that we're not going item number 1, item number 2, item number 3. So we're going to assume that you are going to comply with everything in the engineer's review letter, which is quite lengthy, unless you specifically say otherwise.
Very good. Item number, I'm going to come back to item number 1. Item number 2 is a discussion item that we need to talk about. The ordinance says, as you can see by the plan, we have 3 flag lots on this property, within this project. And the ordinance says that if a public street is more appropriate, it's up to your discretion to do that. It is our opinion that a public street is not practical for this application due to, it's difficult to see it, but the existing structures are in the center of the lot, right in the middle here. There are a number of, the house, there's a pool, and a number of other structures. And it was the intent to maintain the estate effect so that a public street would not be practical for this particular layout. And it is up to this discussion to talk about that, and up to you to possibly approve the layout as proposed.
I think maybe we should go through all the items that we have
let's
issues
do
with,
them all,
and then,
yeah, let's do
then
that.
you can comment on it as well.
The next item that I'd like to discuss is item number 8 in the letter, and that is also a discussion about waivers that we're requesting. Item number 11 is, has to do with recreation land, and it is the applicant's wish to pay a fee in lieu of recreation land, opposed to providing it in this case. So that is another item that I would need your input on.
And just, not to interrupt you, Kirk, but at one time we had talked about in lieu of recreation land, an access path to the township-owned property to the rear of the site. And as discussed at the planning commission, the applicant's no longer amenable to that possibility, is that correct?
There was a lot of discussion about potentially providing an easement for access from Ridge Valley Road to the rear of the property. The township currently owns property to the rear of this property, but because of the terrain, the slope, the boulders, we kind of had a long discussion at the planning commission, and it is our opinion that a path through this property is not practical, and that there are other alternatives to get from Ridge Valley Road someday over to the township open space in somewhat close proximity, so that we have taken that off the table.
Yeah,
Have you submitted a plan to how you would accomplish that?
No.
if I could add some to that, at the planning commission meeting, the planning commission was generally in agreement with their position that it wasn't desirable due to topography to get a path through that site. But that was one of the bases for the planning commission's discussion about a sidewalk along Ridge Valley Road. The thought was an alternate maybe someday to extend sidewalks or paths along Ridge Valley Road down to the village area and have a different access over to the park. The planning commission's recommendation was to identify it as a future sidewalk, but it's one of the waiver items that are for discussion tonight.
In the letter, number 14, talks about landscaping, and that Steve is asking that the township determine if the scheme of landscaping is satisfactory. With respect to landscaping in this property, there aren't that many requirements. We have street trees. There are some existing street trees on the property, and we filled in gaps where street trees do not exist. We have a few, we took a few larger trees down that required replacement, and we've added some replacement trees. So not a very difficult, complex landscaping plan, but it's in the letter for discussion.
And the planning commission was satisfied with the plantings that were proposed.
The last item that I'd like to talk about, again, turns into a waiver request, has to do with streetlights. The ordinance does say that...
What number?
18. Suggests that lighting be provided for all subdivisions. Again, it was discussed at the Planning Commission. There are no streetlights in this area, and the Planning Commission, I believe, was under the impression that a waiver would be acceptable for this section of the ordinance as well.
There was also some discussion whether or not driveway lamp posts might be appropriate in lieu of street lights. I think the planning commission ultimately was their preference that since the sidewalk wasn't going in now, they weren't in favor of driveway lamp posts at this point, but that they might be appropriate if and when the sidewalk was installed.
And then a note on the plan to be approved would have some language to that effect. That's all I have. Everything else is a
That was your item number one then? That you said you were going to
Yes,
item
okay,
number one.
thank you.
Yeah.
Item number one, again, is minor and technical in its context. This property is part of the Unami watershed, and as you know, it's a high-quality watershed. We have some wetlands at the back of the property here. Another reason why a path isn't real practical through there, because you'd have to go through the high-quality wetlands to the rear of the property. The ordinance suggests that our wetland study that we've had done, and we will provide Steve with, needs to be validated by the Army Corps of Engineers. We are a minimum of 250 feet away from the delineated wetlands on this property. So the waiver request that I would suggest and ask for would be that we do not have to go through the arduous process of getting validation from the Army Corps of Engineers. We have hired a qualified wetland expert to provide the study. We will provide that to your engineer, but the waiver is that we'd like not to have to go for validation with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, now, there's no legal requirement for them to go to the Army Corps of Engineers.
It's a subdivision ordinance requirement, so it's a waivable requirement. If there were construction near the wetland area, I would certainly suggest that
Yeah.
that validation be, at least the preliminary determination be granted, but he is correct that the development is quite a distance from the wetland area.
Okay.
And I believe it's protected by a riparian buffer. That's delineated on the plan.
And when you say okay, does that mean that the board's okay with the waiver on that?
No, it means, okay, I understood what.
Yeah,
Oh.
I wanted to, I was waiting until he was done to
Yeah.
ask your opinion, because you do represent us.
Um,
Is that study okay from the person that he's acknowledging that they'll get a specialist, wetland specialist to
A lot of
provide that?
municipalities go in that direction,
Okay.
and I'll leave Steve tell you if it's okay or not. I see a lot of municipalities get wetlands experts to verify the existence of wetlands or not.
I would
Okay.
be satisfied in the circumstance.
You would?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. You okay with that, Don?
Yeah, has everything been settled with PennDOT?
We still have to apply for minimum use driveway permits for the new driveways.
Subject to a determination of the waivers for road improvement.
Correct. Thank you.
So I guess that brings us back to the two biggest issues are the configuration of the lots without a street and road improvement requirements, whether they would be waived with a contribution in lieu of improvements or improvements installed at this time as part of the overall subdivision plan.
And that's part of it's across from the village zone area, correct?
Down the street from.
It's just north of the village zone area.
In its current setting, the way it's very rural out there, I can't see putting in those improvements now, but I think we need some way to protect it so that we can put them in later. What do you think?
I think they have to be done at some point in time
Yeah.
if we go through our
Yeah.
our village plan.
Right, I agree. No, that's what I'm saying, but do we want to do it now?
If they're not done now, it needs to be calculated at what the cost would be when we project what our village plan will be constructed. And I know that you've had some experience in calculating those costs.
Yes.
There have to be a reserve set up, it's not gonna be done now.
Right.
Cover the cost of it. Project the cost out at the time, it might be done as well.
So,
I'm
am
not-
I hearing the board say that you want a fee in lieu of the entire or nearly the entire amount of the improvements?
And we need the right of way protected.
All right.
The right of way
Let's
is
see.
offered for dedication on the
Let's
plan.
see
Oh,
what,
it is, okay,
let's see what Steve comes up with,
okay,
and we'll look at that,
all right,
and we can decide.
Yeah,
yeah, that's good.
yeah, I'd like you to do that.
Okay, good.
So, I'm sorry, I mean, to pick at the scab, but I have to write the resolution. So, right now, we're looking for a fee in lieu of, and you guys are gonna work on what the fee in lieu of, and the board's gonna determine if that fee in lieu of is, enough. The fee in lieu of, is that going into the general reserve fund that you keep for road improvements, or a specific reserve fund? You had mentioned.
Yeah, and Donna,
Well, it ought to be tagged somehow,
Yeah.
so if something's gonna be done in the future, so it's just plowed in there and mixed with everything
The
else.
manager has an opinion.
Yeah, the hard part is gonna be the amount of interest we get versus the price of inflation.
Right.
For the long-term
You get-
improvements, whatever you put into a bank account, the interest rate will not keep up with
Right.
the cost of improvement.
Right.
If you don't put it in now, right away, that money will not be in the future.
All right, well, could we do this?
Unless you
Could he,
forecast
could he,
future costs.
Right.
could Steve analyze that, and then we could look at this again when we know what that will be,
Yeah.
to make a determination
And
at that time?
Look at what we think the future.
Because I do
costs
know
are.
that does happen, and that's been one of the things, you remember years ago, Steve, we went through this with the blacktop prices increasing
Yeah.
10 times in 1 year. The cost of blacktop went up, and when we did the fee in lieu of thing, we lost our butt by the end of the year because blacktop went up so high. So those calculations need to be accurate for the future to protect ourselves.
All right, so, item number 2, which we were actually starting on, is whether or not you wanted this to be a public street, like the roads in there be public streets or not public streets.
There are no streets proposed.
They're lane
Do
lots.
do you agree with this lot layout and agree that redesigning this with a cul-de-sac, a public street, is not practical, and that this lot layout is acceptable in lieu of?
So it'd just be driveways dumping out onto Ridge Valley Road.
That's correct.
Steve, I think that was acceptable to the planning commission, is that correct?
Yes.
That's what-
And the rationale was the preservation of the estate lot in the center of the property, where normally you would put the road right in the center of the property and have lots stacked against it, where you can't do that on this property if you preserve the estate lot.
Right. Which I don't know, we run into a lot of problems with that issue anyway, a lot of times where, there gets to be arguments about who's maintaining the road, who didn't pay their bill, you know, when you have a homeowners association associated with that, so I kinda would like to stay away from that myself. The interior road.
Yeah, no, I
Individual.
don't think it would be very practical there at all.
Yeah,
Okay, so, all right, so you're okay with lane lots, which now what you were talking about was the need for road improvements. And what I'm hearing you say is that Steve will give you an estimate as to the cost of those improvements. And you will defer this issue till final, because this is preliminary plan approval.
Right.
You'll defer until final plan approval, the determination of whether the improvements will be required or whether a fee will be required. Is that correct?
that's pretty accurate, yeah.
All right.
And clearly, it doesn't behoove my client to pay more than the improvements would cost. They'll just put them in.
We understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we want a calculation.
And your client always has the option of putting them in.
Yeah.
Agreed. Just so we're all clear.
Okay, good. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I think 11 is that just a continuation of 8?
No.
All right.
11 is the fee in lieu of for recreation land.
So is there a calculation of how much?
Yes, they're in the
It's in the township fee schedule.
the fee schedule, there's a per lot price for that.
And we'll probably be revisiting that come January, first reorganization meeting, that price might go up.
It's a good thing we're grandfathered.
You said it.
Okay,
Do you have any direction for me? Are you as to whether or not you are going to want a fee or the actual land when I draft the resolution?
The actual land. Do it. Because we're not gonna know what's gonna cost down the road.
Wait a minute, what do you?
She's talking about the driveway.
No,
we're
no.
talking about recreational.
Recreational, I think you take the money
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the park.
Yeah, it would be 8,400 square feet and so that's not gonna get you a whole lot of land.
Right.
So, all right, fee. And then 14, the planning scheme.
I think the planning commission was satisfied, and unless you want to go into more detail on that, I don't have a problem with the trees proposed.
I don't have a problem with
No, I was at the planning commission meeting, I'm fine with it.
And then the last thing is street lighting.
street lighting. Something that we should be considering, because if and when the village is built,
But do we want to add that in with the future plan, the future set aside? Yeah,
you might wanna.
yeah.
Well, you put the lights in.
Huh?
I think you ought to put the lights in.
Now?
Yeah. What are we gonna do? I mean, who's gonna pay for it when it becomes a part or adjacent to the village? And that's not a very bright road going down there at nighttime. And then you got 3 new driveways coming out, 2 or 3. So,
More than that.
5 new driveways.
5 new driveways.
Right, yeah, that's true.
I think we ought to.
Yeah, I think so too. It's gonna be it could be a dangerous spot.
Now, like I said, at the planning commission, we toyed with the option of a driveway lamp post instead of the traditional street light. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
The ordinance isn't very specific about that. It is very specific about streetlights at intersections,
Right.
street intersections. We don't have any street intersections. It just says lighting. So I would agree with Steve that if we're going to do something, it makes more sense to do more of a driveway post light on a photo cell. The neighbors, you know, there's more light.
Sure.
That will give more light than is there now, so we don't want to overwhelm the neighbors with the light that we're adding to the streetscape.
I see that concept. I would support something like that.
And
I'm gonna propose,
Huh?
why don't they give us a proposal what they're gonna do?
Well, they're asking us.
you're right, there's questions associated with that, and they are, when you put in streetlights, the second-class townships code says that the residents, so it would be the initial developer, has to petition the township to establish a streetlight district. And the township establishes a streetlight district, and then those streetlights get taxed, and Suzanne's the cost of the streetlights gets taxed. If you're going to have driveway posts, who's going to pay for them? How are you going to make sure that property owners know that those aren't just there at their option and for their convenience, so that the second property owner doesn't take down the driveway post because they don't want that light there? So those questions have to be determined. There has to be, so you might want to come up with a proposal, as Mr. DeVal suggested, to, don't make a face, to tell the board how you're going to ensure, be it a homeowners association or be it a declaration of covenants, that how you're going to ensure that those driveway lights or driveway post lights actually stay in place, and who's going to pay for them.
First of all, we have no homeowners association that's needed for this development yet. I would suggest that declaration of covenants and restrictions could be done up. There will be that. There will be stormwater management facilities as well as BMPs on the project. So there will be a stormwater maintenance and operation agreement that does go along with this. Moreover, the post lights could be installed within the right-of-way easement, so that if it's in your easement, you have more control as to their continuing function, and certainly that they cannot be removed, opposed to them being on outside of the right-of-way and on the lots. I never really thought about this to this degree, but that is something that could provide you with more enforcement power if it's in the easement, that they make sure that they stay there.
So you're suggesting that with driveway post lights, that the board of that your people are going to petition the board to establish a streetlight district?
No, I'm not. These
Right.
these lights would be privately owned and maintained. This is not going to be a burden on the taxpayers. This is going to be, they're going to be owned and maintained and paid for by the residents. But I think what I'm hearing is you want to make sure that the resident or the second resident doesn't come in and say, I don't like that, I'm taking it down. Whereas if it's in the right-of-way, you can say, no, you're not taking it down. I'm just saying that.
I'm not so much, I'll leave that to you and Steve to figure out where they should be located. But if we're going to do a declaration of covenants and restrictions, then it should address the fact that they can't be taken down and that the homeowners are responsible for maintaining and paying the electric bill.
Got that,
We're
Steve?
we're amenable to that.
Okay, all right, okay.
That was all the questions I had
Yes,
for
ma'am.
you.
Do you have any more questions, Jay?
No, I think he's covered it.
No,
All right, so,
question over there.
Yes.
John Swartuck, 715 Ridge Valley Road. Since this is a major subdivision, is there no open space set-aside requirement?
I think they just said that there was an open space set-aside requirement of 8,400 square feet, and the board elected to take up the fee in lieu alternative.
For how many acres?
It's a matter of how many lots. So what the ordinance requires is 1,400 square feet per dwelling unit,
That's recreation land, Mary.
as opposed to
There is
open
no open
space.
space required with this use.
With
Yeah,
a-
I think, John, what you're thinking of is the, like say down on Clymer Avenue, can't think of the name, the old heritage developments there. Those higher density developments that are on smaller lots, they have a percentage of area, overall site area that has to be open space.
Right.
This is not that type of a cluster subdivision, just straight up single family lots, and it doesn't have a percentage open space requirement. There's a separate recreation requirement, and that's what we're talking about, the fee.
Thank you for the clarity.
And one more thing on the street
Oh,
lights.
excuse me, Ron.
No, let's
Oh,
stay
okay,
there.
Mary, you go ahead, yeah.
The fixture will be, the type of fixture will be submitted to the board as part of the final plan approval.
Sure. I'm envisioning a colonial type post light.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. Was that your last question? Mary?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. You had a question, sir?
Don White, Allentown Road.
Yeah.
I guess I need some explanation on exactly what the roads will be here. Is it going to be a driveway for each resident out to the road? Is it going to be a private road going in there? What exactly is the road?
Driveway.
Each lot will have its own driveway.
Each lot is going to have its own driveway coming out to Allentown Road.
No,
Ridge
No,
Valley.
Ridge
Ridge Valley.
Ridge Valley Road.
Sorry,
Yeah.
from Allentown
Yeah.
Road.
Okay. All right, where are we here? Is this for preliminary approval based on?
Preliminary.
Yes. And so you just want to direct me, it doesn't take a vote, direct me to prepare a resolution for your consideration next
Okay.
week.
All right, okay.
I'll second it.
And you'll second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Steve?
Okay. I only have one other item. It's not on the agenda, but it just came up today. If you recall, the township has a state mandated MS4 program, which is our municipal separate storm sewer system, and every few years we have to update that program. And under this year's cycle, they added a whole nother phase or aspect to the program, which is a PRP plan. It's sediment reduction of stormwater into receiving streams that are in urbanized areas of the township. So it's only specific areas of the township, primarily down in the southern end of the township. In any event, we submitted that plan earlier this year. We had a public meeting, we advertised it, and we were summarily rejected by DEP, as were 99% of the other plans submitted across the state. So the DEP set up new guidelines on how they wanted the information prepared and submitted, and they allowed us to submit it in incremental phases. So we've been working on that all year. And just today, we got an email back saying, we're happy with your plan as presented. So we have to go through the advertisement process again. So what I'm asking for tonight is authorization to advertise for a 30-day public comment period. We'll provide the plan, the physical map and the narrative plans to the township so they can post it on the website. And then at your February meeting, because the 30-day period will take us past your January meeting, then you could have a public meeting at your February meeting to discuss the options proposed.
Okay. Second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's all I have unless there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. Motion to approve the engineer's report?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Solicitor's report?
Yeah, there's only one item under the solicitor's report this evening, and that's an amendment to your open space, your building code appeals board. When the state enacted the statewide building code and you opted into that program in 2004, one of the requirements was that each municipality had to have a UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, Construction Code, appeals board. And that board would determine disputes that property owners had with the building code official. You are in a joint appeals board with Silverdale Borough, Dublin Borough, and East Rock Hill Township. One of the problems that we've been having in the past couple of years is on the infrequent times when there is an appeal, it's hard to get 5 members together, which is what the ordinance requires. So this is an amendment to the existing agreement between the municipalities, and in order to enter into an agreement with other municipalities, you have to adopt an ordinance. So what I'm coming before you tonight with is an ordinance authorizing you to sign an amendment to the agreement, which will do a couple of things. One, it requires every municipality to appoint members so that there's more members in the pool, and then allows hearings to be held with 3 members instead of the 5 members that were required before. And this ordinance has been advertised for each of the municipalities, each of the 4 municipalities who are members, and it is before you this evening for consideration. It will need a public hearing, which means people get to comment on it if they would like.
Okay. Is there any comments, Jay?
I have none. You're opening it up for a public hearing?
Oh, well, you want to take board comment first and then
Yeah.
open for...
No, I don't.
Just check to see if the
Okay,
board
yeah.
has any comments.
No, I support the plan that was
Okay,
presented.
I will open this up for public comment.
Yep.
Seeing none?
Is this
sorry.
just with this?
Charlie?
Charlie Gatz, Shoecraft Road. Anyway, on your monies that you...
Oh, Charlie, this is just public comment on
Oh, I'm
this
sorry.
agenda
On
item.
this issue.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, hang on. Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on the UCC board ordinance? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment.
And then if you wanted to adopt it, your motion would be a motion to authorize the adoption of ordinance 239.
So moved.
And a second?
No, I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Get a motion to approve the solicitor's report.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Township manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item is the treasurer's report ending November 30th, 2018. The general fund has a balance of $436,371.28. Highway aid, $99,610.83. Open space, $1,007,536.83. The park fund, $7,263.85. The equipment fund, $15,410.47. Highway capital, $126.26. The street light, $32,977.50. The reserve funds, the general fund reserve, $324,513.49. Open space Manderfield, $50,599. The sewage maintenance fund, $169,918.82. The stormwater fund, $5,900.902.68. And the escrow funds, $352,769.62. You also have a copy of the
Okay. I get a motion to approve treasurer's report. Okay, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
The next,
Budget.
the next item is the 2019 budget.
Can we hold on 1 second? I did say we would allow people time to comment. If you would give your report first, and then we will allow people, if they have something to say that's other than what we've already discussed, because I think we spent enough time on that. You can make a small comment about that if you want, but go ahead.
Yeah, it was properly, at last month's meeting, you advertised, gave the authorization to advertise. It's been advertised, put onto the website. It's for your adoption tonight. There's just some small items that we're gonna take care of this year, such as paving the parking lot, fixing the public works roof, the park expansion, the tot lot expansions, the benches, and the finishing of the codification project. Other than that, it's basically the same.
So, before it's approved or voted on, are there comments? Yes, right here.
My name is Ward Moyer from 125 Lonely Road. First off, I'd like to commend Supervisor Miller on lowering his insurance costs and his efforts to change the plan